I'm Hypnos, and like every quiet night, I have a story to share. You may subscribe for the nights ahead. Close your eyes and let the story begin. The story of Mike Tyson does not begin in a shining arena, under light, or with crowds chanting his name. It begins on the cracked sidewalks of Brooklyn, in a neighborhood where buildings lean tired against one another, their bricks chipped, their windows clouded. Brownsville in the 1970s was a place where opportunity seemed scarce and danger seemed ordinary. Sirens echoed in the distance. Dogs barked behind fences, and children learned quickly to keep their heads down and their fists ready. Among them was a boy named Michael Gerard Tyson, born in the summer of 1966. He was small at first, quiet, often overlooked. His father left early in his life, and his mother, Lorna, carried the weight of raising her children alone. Money was thin, nights were long, and the boy grew up in the company of struggle. Yet, even in that hardship, there was something unusual about Mike. By the time he was 10, his body was already beginning to carry a kind of strength. Neighbors noticed the broadness of his shoulders, the intensity in his stare. He had a softness too. He loved pigeons, raising them on rooftops, watching them flying free above the broken street. They were his escape, his quiet joy. But on the ground, survival demanded something different. Mike Tyson was often bullied, his lisp and shy manner making him an easy target. At first, he endured. Then, one day, when boys killed one of his pigeons, something in him snapped. He struck back, with fists faster and harder than anyone expected. From then on, he fought not only to defend himself, but because fighting seemed to be the only language the street respected. By 13, he had been arrested more times than he could count. Trouble came easily in Brownsville, and Mike was drawn into it like iron to a magnet. Theft, fights, police cars, the cold rooms of detention, these became part of his young life. He might have been lost completely, another boy swallowed by the street, if not for a twist of fate, in a juvenile detention center. A counselor noticed his raw strength and his speed. He put gloves on him, placed him in a ring, and for the first time, Mike found something larger than anger. Inside the ropes, chaos became order. His fist, wild in the street, became sharp and disciplined. His body, restless, found rhythm. The boy who had been feared for his temper was now feared for his talent. Still, he was only at the beginning. Ahead lay a meeting that would shape him more than any fight ever could. A meeting with an old trainer who believed in him, who would become father, teacher, prophet, and architector of his destiny. For now, though he was just a boy from Brooklyn, broken home, hard street, a rooftop full of pigeons, and fists that carried the promise of both destruction and salvation. Fate often arrives quietly, in small turns. But for Mike Tyson, it came with the sound of gloves and the presence of an old man who saw further than most. After his arrest piled up, Mike was sent to a reform school in upstate New York, the Trine School for Boys. It was a place meant to contain troubled youth, but it also carried unexpected opportunities. One of the counselors there, Bobby Stewart, had been a boxer himself. He noticed Mike's size, his raw power, the way his fists seemed to carry natural weight. Stewart decided to test him. In the small gym, and the harsh fluorescent light, he sparred with Mike. What he saw stunned him. Mike was untrained, wild, but there was something primal in the way he moved, something that couldn't be taught. Stewart told him, with the right guidance, he could become champion of the world, but he needed discipline. He needed to listen. So Stewart introduced him to a man who could give him that discipline. Constantine Cus D'Amato. Cus lived in Catskill, New York, far from the street of Brooklyn. He was in his 70s then, a man who had already shaped champions, who believed boxing was not only a sport, but a science of the mind. He spoke of fear, of will, of destiny. To Cus, punch came not from the arm, but from the heart of a fighter's belief. When Mike first arrived, he was rough, guarded, suspicious. But Cus saw through the armor. He looked into Mike's eyes and told him plainly, "You could be the youngest heavyweight champion of the world." For a boy who had known only ridicule and survival, those words were a revelation. Someone believed in him, not as a thug, not as a lost cause, but as a fighter with a future. Under Cus, Mike's days took new shape. Early mornings began with runs through the quiet Catskill Street, mist rising from the fields. Afternoons were filled with drills, slipping punches, bobbing, weaving, perfecting the peek-a-boo style Cus had developed. Gloves high, head moving constantly, every step calculated. Nights ended with conversations. Cus speaking of champions past, of courage, of controlling fear. Mike listened. For the first time, he had a mentor, a father figure. Cus didn't just teach him how to fight, he taught him how to think, how to believe in himself. Fear is the greatest obstacle to learning, Cus told him. But fear is your best friend, too. It's like fire. You control it, it can cook for you. You let it control you, it will burn everything down. The bond between them deepened quickly. Mike even moved into Cus' home. There, alongside Cus' partner, Camille, he found stability he had never known. Meals shared at a family table. encouragement in the place of anger. It was as if Cus had not only given him boxing, but also a home. In the gym, Mike transformed. His body grew stronger, faster. He hit the heavy bag with such force that people stopped to stare. His sparring partners, older and more experienced, were shocked at his ferocity. Cus watched closely, always guiding, always reminding him. Discipline, control, belief. By the time Mike was 16, transformation was undeniable. The boy from Brownsville, once lost to the street, now looked like a force of nature. Cus told him again, "You will be champion." And Mike, no longer doubting, believed it. The world of boxing was beginning to whisper about the young prodigy in cast skill. Soon, those whispers would grow into roars. For now, under the steady hand of Cus D'Amato, Mike Tyson was becoming something more than a boy with fists. He was becoming a fighter with purpose. And in the quiet of the gym, as gloves thudded against leather and breath rose in clouds, the making of Iron Mike had truly begun. In Catskill, under Cus D'Amato's watchful eye, Mike Tyson grew with astonishing speed. What began as raw strength and anger became sharpened into precision. His body changed, muscles hardening, shoulders broadening, speed quickening. In the gym, the sound of his punches echoed like thunder. Sparring partners twice his age struggled to withstand him. Cus believed in shaping not only the body, but the mind. He drilled Tyson in the peekaboo style he had developed. Gloves high, head in constant motion, weaving side to side, stepping forward with relentless pressure. It was a style built for destruction, designed to slip punches and deliver devastating counters. Mike absorbed it as though it were second nature. But more than the style, Cus taught him belief. "You are a fighter," he told him, "and one day you will be the youngest heavyweight champion of the world." Mike repeated those words to himself, whispering them in quiet moments, holding them like a shield. For a boy who had once been bullied, once been dismissed, belief was as powerful as training. Tyson's amateur career began to draw attention. In tournaments across the country, crowds gasped at the ferocity of his teenager. From Catskill, he moved with speed unusual for a heavyweight, his punches short and devastating, his demeanor cold and focused. Victories came quickly, often by knockout. Opponents crumbled in seconds, unable to withstand the storm. Tragedy struck in 1985 when Cus D'Amato, the man who had shaped him, died before seeing Tyson's professional peak. Mike was devastated. Cus had been more than a trainer. He had been father, philosopher, protector. At the funeral, Tyson wept openly, telling reporters, "I'm nothing without Cus." Yet Cus's teachings had already sunk deep. His guidance remained in Tyson's mind, in his movement, in his heart. With Cus gone, Tyson passed forward under the guidance of trainers Jim Jacobs and Kevin Roney. He turned professional in 1985, just 18 years old. His debut was explosive. A first-round knockout. More followed. Fight after fight ended within minutes. His fist a blur, his opponent left sprawled on the canvas. The boxing world took notice. Reporters began calling him Iron Mike. He wore black trunks, no robe, no socks, his expression cold, his presence menacing. When the bell rang, he charged forward like predator, giving no space, no mercy. Crowds flocked to see him. Television carried his image across America. He was young, he was frightening, and he was winning. By the end of 1985, he had fought 15 times and won them all, most by knockout. It was a pace unheard of, a streak that seemed unstoppable. The boy from Brownsville, once lost to the street, had become the most feared young fighter in the world. And ahead lay the fight that would make him champion, the moment when Cus D'Amato's prophecy would come true. By late 1986, the name Mike Tyson was no longer whispered only in gyms. It rang through arenas, through newspapers, through televisions across the world. He was just 20 years old, but already his record glowed with victories, most by knockout. Opponents fell before him like trees in a storm, their fight ending before spectators had even settled into their seat. The heavyweight division, once ruled by giants of past eras, seemed to tremble at his rise. Tyson moved with a fury unseen in decades, his head slipping side to side, his gloves tight to his face, his fists flashing forward in short, brutal burst. He did not waste time. He did not waste movement. He came to finish. On November 22, 1986, in Las Vegas, Tyson faced Trevor Berbick for the WBC heavyweight title. Berbick was older, experienced, the man who had once defeated Muhammad Ali in Ali's final fight. But to Tyson, it was simply the final step toward destiny. When the bell rang, Tyson attacked like storm breaking. Berbick tried to jab, tried to hold, but Tyson's speed and power overwhelmed him. Every punch landed with frightening force, the sound echoing through the crowd. In the second round, Tyson delivered a flurry that ended with a left hook crashing against Berbick's head. Berbick stumbled, fell, rose, stumbled again, his legs unable to obey him. He fell once more, tried to stand, fell again. The referee waved it off. The fight was over. At just 20 years old, Mike Tyson had become the youngest heavyweight champion in history. The prophecy Cus D'Amato had spoken years before had come true. The boy who once kept pigeons on rooftops, the boy who had fought bullies in Brownsville, the boy who had found salvation in a gym, now stood with a championship belt around his waist, the world watching in awe. Tyson did not stop there. He unified the division, collecting belts, defeating every contender who stepped forward. His reign was brutal, his knockout spectacular. Fighters entered the ring with fear, some already beaten before the first punch was thrown. Outside the ring, his fame grew. Crowds pressed close. Children shouted his name. Reporters followed him everywhere. He became a global star. His face on magazine covers, his voice on television, his highlights replayed again and again. He wasn't only a fighter, he was a phenomenon. But with fame came shadows. Wealth poured in, but so did temptation. His personal life grew chaotic, his relationships turbulent. He lived with extravagance, but also with restlessness. The discipline of Cus's quiet home, Catskill, was now replaced by noise, by cameras, by chaos. Yet in the ring, he remained unmatched. Through the late 1980s, Mike Tyson reigned supreme, the most feared fighter on earth. Fans spoke of him as invincible, unstoppable, inevitable. The boy had become champion. The champion had become king. And yet, as history always shows, even kings face storms that crowds cannot protect them from. By the late 1980s, Mike Tyson was not just a boxer. He was a force of nature, household name, figure who seemed larger than life. His knockout filled highlight reels. His scowl intimidated opponents before the first bell. Wherever he went, crowds gathered. Children wore his name on t-shirts. Adults spoke of his fight with awe. At just 21, he was the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. Wealth followed, mansions, cars, jewels, things the boy from Brownsville could never have imagined was suddenly his. He fought a sprawling estate with gate and fountains, filled rooms with furniture fit for kings, acquired tigers as pets, their roars echoing in cages by the pool. His life became as dramatic outside the ring as it was inside. But money and fame brought turbulence. The quiet discipline Cus D'Amato had instilled was harder to hold onto in a world filled with cameras, temptation, and endless attention. Tyson's marriage to actress Robin Givens in 1988 became tabloid spectacle. At first, the pairing seemed glamorous, the champion and the star. But soon, headlines swirled with stories of argument, accusations, and interviews that played out on national television. Reporters circled his every move, eager to capture not only his victories, but his chaos. Tyson's temper, once contained by the structure of the gym, often spilled into public view. Confrontations, lawsuits, sudden outbursts, they became part of his image. Some fans saw him as uncontrollable, others as misunderstood, still others as both. Even as his personal life made headlines, in the ring, he remained fearsome. Fighters stepped forward, and one after another they fell. Knockout in seconds. Referees pulling men off the canvas. Crowds roaring as if watching a storm devour the sky. For a time, It seemed no human alive could stand before him. Yet cracks began to show. The discipline that had once defined him began to waver. Training was sometimes neglected. Late nights became frequent. Distractions piled high. His circle of advisors shifted constantly, voices pulling him in different directions. The center that Cus had once provided was gone. By 1989, the image of invincibility began to carry shadows. Tyson was still champion, still dominant, but questions grew louder. Could chaos outside the ring undo greatness inside it? Could a young man, raised in hardship, thrust into wealth and fame almost overnight, carry the weight without stumbling? The answer would soon come, in a ring far from Las Vegas, under the light of Tokyo, where the world would witness the unthinkable. In February of 1990, the heavyweight champion of the world walked into a ring in Tokyo, Japan. Mike Tyson was undefeated, terrifying, seemingly invincible. His opponent, Douglas, was a journeyman fighter, respectable but not feared, a man given almost no chance by bookmakers. The odds were so lopsided that most dismissed the fight as routine. Another quick knockout on Tyson's path of dominance. But life does not follow the odds. From the opening bell, Douglas fought with heart and precision. His jab was sharp, his movement confident, his will unbroken. Tyson pressed forward, throwing heavy hooks, but he was slower, less disciplined, less focused than in his prime. The chaos of his personal life had begun to seep into the ring. For round after round, Douglas kept Tyson at bay, landing punches that snapped the champion's head back, testing the myth of invincibility. In the 8th round, Tyson landed a powerful uppercut that dropped Douglas to one knee. For a moment, it seemed the story would end as always, with Tyson victories, but Douglas rose before the count of 10. He stood steadied himself and fought back with fury. In the 10th round, history turned. Douglas unleashed a combination that sent Tyson sprawling to the canvas. The crowd gasped, the referee counted. Tyson struggled to find his mouthpiece, to rise, to fight on. But his body betrayed him. For the first time, Mike Tyson was beaten. The world reeled, headlines screamed. The unbeatable champion had fallen, not to a legend, not to a rival, but to a man few believed in. The shock echoed far beyond boxing. It was proof that even the strongest can stumble, that even kings can fall. The loss was only the beginning of Tyson's troubles. In 1992, he was convinced of rape and sentenced to prison. At 25, once the youngest heavyweight champion in history, he now sat behind bars, stripped of his freedom, his career halted, his reputation scarred. Prison was harsh, but it forced reflection. Tyson trained, Reed kept himself alive with thought of returning. The boy who had once been saved by boxing now found it saving him again, even within walls and bars. When he was released in 1995, the world watched closely. Could the man who had fallen rise again? Could Iron Mike Tyson reclaim his throne? The answer, as always with Tyson, would be dramatic. When Mike Tyson walked out of prison in 1995, the world leaned closer. He was no longer the young prodigy of Cus D'Amato at his side. No longer the invincible champion of the late 80s. He was a man scarred by defeat, humbled by prison, older now but still dangerous. The question hovered, could Iron Mike return? His comeback began with spectacle. Arenas filled. Pay-per-view screens glowed. Crowds roared as the familiar figure entered the ring once more. And for a time, it seemed as though nothing had changed. Opponents crumbled quickly, beaten before the echo of his footsteps faded. Tyson's fist still carried thunder. His aura still bent men's wills. Within a year, he reclaimed heavyweight belt. The crown, once stripped, now placed back upon his head. But boxing had changed. New champions had risen. New rivalries formed. And in 1996, Mike Tyson faced Evander Holyfield, a fighter known not only for strength, but for resilience. A man unafraid of storms. Their first fight shocked many. Holyfield absorbed Tyson's punches, fought back with discipline, and stopped Tyson in the 7th round. For the second time, Tyson had fallen. On the stage, the world was watching, but the rematch, held in June 1997, became infamous for reasons no one could have predicted. That night, the air in the arena was electric. Tyson interferes, eyes burning. Holyfield, calm and steady, met him with determination. Early rounds were rough, filled with clinches, headbutts, shoves. Tyson's grew frustrated, convinced Holyfield was fighting dirty. Anger, always close to the surface, took hold. In the 3rd round, as they clinched, Tyson did something that stunned the world. He turned his head and bit down on Holyfield's ear. Holyfield recoiled in shock. The crowd gasped. The referee scrambled. The fight continued briefly. But Tyson bit again. This time, the referee stopped it. Tyson was disqualified. The images traveled instantly across the globe. Iron Mike, once feared for his fist, now remembered for his teeth. The Nevada Commission suspended his license. Critics declared his career disgraced. For many, the bite became symbol of chaos, overtaking discipline, of fury consuming greatness. Yet, Tyson remained a paradox, even as scandal surrounded him. Crowds still came, still watched, still whispered his name. He fought again in the years that followed, winning some, losing others. The aura of invincibility was gone, but the fascination remained. He had risen, fallen, risen again, and now stumbled in the most shocking way imaginable. The boy from Brooklyn, the champion of the world, had become something larger and darker than boxing alone. By the early 2000s, the storm of Mike Tyson's career had quieted. He was no longer the feared young champion, no longer the invincible force who ended fights in seconds. Losses piled up. his body slowed, his timing faltered. In 2005, after a final bout against Kevin McBride, Tyson sat on his stool, told the world he was done. The fighter who had once terrified the heavyweight division had laid down his gloves. But Tyson's story did not end with retirement. Away from the ring, he struggled at first. Money vanished as quickly as it had come. Headlines followed him. Bankruptcy, arrest, mistakes replayed endlessly on television. For a time, it seemed as if the chaos that had always swirled around him would consume him completely. And yet slowly, different Tyson began to emerge. The ferocity softened, the anger quieted. He began to speak with honesty about his past. The triumphs, the failures, the regret. He told stories not as boost, but as lessons. The man once called the baddest man on the planet revealed vulnerability, humor, even tenderness. He found new life in unexpected places. Acting roles in films and television brought laughter instead of fear. His one-man show, Undisputed Truth, toured stages around the world, where Tyson stood under light not to fight, but to tell his story. Candid and unguarded. Audiences listened, not to a champion, but to a man reflecting on the wild road he had walked. He also found peace in family, with his children, with his wife. He built a quieter life. He spoke often of love, of forgiveness, of seeking balance. He invested in new ventures, including a cannabis business, becoming advocate for wellness and healing. The man who had once embodied chaos now spoke of calm. When he appeared in public, people greeted him with warmth. They remembered the fearsome fighter, but they also saw the journey, the boy from Brooklyn, the prodigy of Cus D'Amato, the youngest champion in history, the man who fell, rose, fell again, and finally found a measure of peace. Mike Tyson's legacy is complicated. Like the man himself, he was destructive in the ring, often destructive outside it. He was feared, hated, adored, admired. He lived as a storm, but in late years, he sought to live as still water. His story reminds us that greatness is never simple, that strength is not only in fist, but in the courage to face one's own past, to admit mistakes, to search for peace after a lifetime of war. Mike Tyson will forever be remembered for his knockout, his speed, his power, his rage. But he will also be remembered for his redemption, for the way he turned chaos into reflection, for the honesty with which he shared his journey. The boy who once raised pigeons on Brooklyn rooftops became a champion, a fallen king, a man still standing. Iron Mike, fierce and flawed, left the ring long ago, but his story continues to echo, steady as a heartbeat. This was Hypnos. Another story has been told, and now it's time to rest. Good night.